Hi, this is Tiffanie Travel, where we help women and families travel and live richer. So today we have a special guest who is joining us from Paris. I'm going to bring her on now. Hi,
Hi, good to see you.
good to see you. So thank you for being a guest on the show, and we can start by you introducing yourself.
Perfect. So I'm Tiana. I'm originally from California, so Bay Area, San Francisco area. I've been living in Paris for almost 6 years now. I came originally just was supposed to be a short-term thing, and I ended up liking it, and now it's been 6 years. So yeah, that's about me.
6 years in Paris. That is cool. I watched some of your videos and I saw you did your master's in Paris. Did you do your undergraduate degree over there as well?
No, so I actually did my undergrad degree in the States. I went to Arizona State. So I graduated, I worked for a year, and then I was like, oh, I kind of want to travel. But, I didn't really have money to travel. And I had a roommate in college who was an au pair. And so she started telling me about it. And so I decided that that's what I wanted to do. And that's ultimately how I ended up here.
Okay, so you started off as an au pair. How long did you do that?
So I did that for 1 year in Paris. And then I actually got here August 2019. So I was only here a few months before COVID happened.
Okay.
So we were locked down for a few months. And then I said, like I didn't really get the full experience. So I think I should stay another year. And then another year turned into another year.
Cool.
So
We have Taylor V that joined us. Hi. If you're watching, feel free to say hey in the chat. This is Where Tiana Travels, and she is based in Paris. I'm trying to show it on the screen here, but Where Tiana Travels, if I can, there it is. So there it is. So there's her handle. Okay, so you wanted to travel more. Were there other reasons for leaving the US, or was it just you wanted to see the world?
yeah, I think initially it was honestly just I wanted to travel. I really planned to just be here for a year and then go back, get a full-time job, settle down, all the things. But I think once I got here very quickly, I kind of knew that I felt better being over here and that I didn't think I wanted to go back to the States.
Okay, you say you felt better. Like, in what way? Like the work balance, just less stress. We have a couple more people. Celine says, hey. The plant plan, which is one of my friends. Hey.
Yeah, I think definitely the work-life balance was a huge reason, a huge difference that I noticed between the US and here, as well as like just quality of life in general, quality of the food, the culture, the opportunities for travel as well. I really like to travel, and it's easier to do that here than it is in the States. And then safety as well was a huge reason why I've decided to stay here.
Okay. And when you were an au pair, how does that work? Do you get paid, or is it just you get the housing as part of the relationship?
Yeah, so you actually get both. You get housing. So typically you live with the family. Either they have an extra room in the house, or sometimes families who live in Paris, they'll rent like a small studio apartment in Paris that you'll live in, but they take care of that. And then they give you like pocket money every week. So it's not like a real salary. It's maybe like 100 to 120 euros a week. And then they pay for your transportation pass, your phone, and my family, I ate dinner with them, so they gave me some money for groceries, but I never really had to buy groceries because I would eat with them. So it just depends on each family what they offer, but those are like the minimum what each family has to provide.
Okay. And do you have the weekends off, or you're working like 7 days a week?
So I think the max you can work is 20, if I remember correctly, it's 20 to 25 hours a week. So your family can split it up how they choose. For mine, kids in France on Wednesdays, they don't have school. So I had the kids all day on Wednesdays. And then the rest of the week, I just had to pick them up from school at 4:30, kept them till we ate dinner at like 8. And then the parents had like golfing Saturday morning. So I would keep the kids from like 8 to 12. And then I had the rest of the weekend off.
Okay, when you say kids, is that all schools, like private, public? There's no school on Wednesdays for anybody, for any students in Paris?
Yeah, in France, in all of France. I think it's up to age, like once they go to middle school, maybe age 11, 12, then they have school every day. But the rest, like all schools, all kids in France, they don't have school on Wednesdays.
And what do they think the students are doing on Wednesday? Or is it for the teachers to have time to plan? Like, what is the purpose?
Honestly, I'm really not sure what the purpose is. Maybe they just think maybe it's for the teachers, maybe it's for like a better balance for the children. I'm not really sure. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting when I first came. I was like, what do you mean you don't have school? It's the middle of the week. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. We have a person joining from Los Angeles, Kaylin, and another one from Nairobi.
Oh, cool.
Hi. Okay. So, were there any other countries you were considering besides Paris or France?
Yes. So originally, I decided I wanted to be an au pair, and my
Mhm.
roommate, the girl who told me about it, she had done her au pair stay in Australia. And so I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like I would love to go there. I've always wanted to visit." So I was thinking of going there initially, but then I kind of talked myself out of it because it's just so far. Not only is it super far, like the time difference, I think it's like 18 hours ahead of the West Coast where I'm from. So I was like, it just would be so difficult. Like if there was an emergency and I had to go home, it would take forever to get home. And like it's a new country, but it's not really, I'm not learning a new language. Like the cultures are still very similar. So I decided against that. So then I said, okay, I wanted to go to Europe. So I was looking at Germany and France. So I interviewed with a few families in Germany and I don't know, I just wasn't really feeling it. And then I told myself, I'm not going to spend time learning German because realistically, if I ever do go back to the US, I'm never going to speak German. That's not going to help me at all. So then I thought about going to Paris and then I talked to a few families there and ended up finding the family that I went with. And so I think that was definitely a better fit for me.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, Australia is very far. It's like 22 hours on the plane,
It's so
and
far.
there's no direct flights. You have to stop. Well, from the East Coast of the United States, there's no direct flights. Maybe from California.
I think even from California, there's no direct flight. I mean, there probably are, but they're so expensive. Most of them I saw had a layover like in Hawaii or
Yeah.
so. So,
Yeah, yeah. You stop either in Hawaii or if you go the other way, you stop in Europe for a few
mm,
hours because it's I feel like the plane needs to refuel and
yeah,
it just
it's
can't
so
make
far.
it to Australia. So we have Lindsay. She says, "Wow, that sounds lovely all around. Good for the kids and teachers. Parents, maybe not so much."
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how some of the parents do it. Like if they don't have an au pair and they work during the week, I can imagine it's difficult for them to organize like childcare during the week for kids. The kids are not in school.
Is it common for someone to stay home? Like if it's not so is it common, I guess, for women to stay home, or do most women work in after they have kids, or do they have someone in the house? Like how do they? Because here it's common that kids go to daycare, so that's
Mhm.
what's like the norm. And then, but for normal middle class people, they go to daycare. So what's like the norm over there?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty common for both parents to be working.
Mhm.
When I was an au pair, the family that I worked for, both parents were working, but I did know like a few of the kids' friends had like the mom stayed home. But I think it is pretty common for both parents to be working. So yeah, they usually just arrange like a family member to take the kids on Wednesdays, or there are like daycares as well, but it's difficult to find a spot. So you have to plan like a year in advance if you want to get a spot in childcare. So yeah, they usually have like a family member, or a lot of families have au pairs as well.
Okay, so it's pretty common for people to have an au pair,
Mhm.
and it could be a family member or it could be a stranger.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an au pair, typically it's a stranger.
Oh,
But then a lot of families here like have family members that live close by that they can like arrange to pick up the kids if they need.
I see. And then I read this book. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Bringing Up BB, and it's about it's this American woman, and she moves to France, and she has kids in France, and she's kind of talking about the French culture and how it's different from the American culture, and she's talking about things like where she sends her daughter to school and they eat like real food even at a young age. They're eating like cheese cubes of real cheese and real like all these things that you would have at a restaurant. They're
Mhm.
eating in school for little kids.
Yeah. Yeah, they eat very well here, definitely. Something that's kind of similar that I noticed when I first got here. So when I first arrived, the kids that I took care of, one was 8 months and one was 5. And I remember the first night we had dinner, like they set the table and everything, and like they put out glasses even for the kids. And I was like, that's so interesting because when I was a kid, like I didn't use like a real glass until I was like maybe 8, 9, but these kids are like really small and they know how to like hold the glass without dropping it, without breaking it, use their silverware correctly. Like it was very interesting. It was kind of a little culture shock for me.
That is cool. So we have another viewer from California, Carmen. And is it your family and friends?
Yeah, that's my mom.
So Kaylin says, how do you find other au pairs in your area? And does your host family connect you with others? I guess like for socializing?
Yeah, so there were a lot of like Facebook groups. That was my best friend when I was an au pair. That's how I met actually my best friend now. She was also an au pair from the US. Yeah, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups. There's a lot of like meetups and stuff for other au pairs in the neighborhood. So it's actually fairly easy to meet people when you're an au pair.
Okay. And then you're working with the kids. Did you talk to them in English? And were the parents okay with that?
Yeah, so that's actually like the idea of an au pair. It's supposed to be a cultural exchange. So typically, parents will hire someone who doesn't speak any French because they want their kids to learn English. So I could only speak to the kids in English, which at the time it wasn't an issue because I didn't speak French, so I couldn't speak to them in French even if I wanted to. So I would only speak to the kids in English, and then the parents would speak to me in French so that I could learn French, but then I could also teach the kids English.
Okay. Okay. Okay, good. So yeah, then it's a win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
How did the visa process work when you were, I guess, is there a company that you use to arrange this whole thing and then do they help you with the visa?
So it depends. You can use a company. There's like au pair agencies that you can use, and you pay them a fee, and they like find you a family. They help you like through all the processes. And then there's websites that you can use that are 100% free. It's kind of like a care.com kind of thing. Like you make a profile, the families make a profile, you guys can connect. So that's what I did. But my family helped me out like with the whole visa process because they had already had like 2 or 3 au pairs before me from the US. So they knew like they told me exactly what to do, what kind of visa I need, what documents I need to bring. So they really helped like streamline everything for me. So it wasn't super difficult. And I've had to renew my visa a few times since then. So I'm I'm quite well versed in the visa process.
Okay. And so you said that you're working 25 hours a week. So what were you doing with the other hours and days that you weren't watching the kids?
Mhm. So, in the beginning, I took a few French classes, maybe like 2 or 3 days a week. I would go take French classes. But besides that, during the day, I would like go into the city, go to museums, try to do any free things I could find because remember, I'm making like 100 euros a week, so I don't have a ton of money. But just like being outside in Paris, like it's so fun, even when you're not spending money. So yeah, I would go do picnics, go to museums, just like walk along the river, things like that. And then about 6 months into my au pair stay, I started teaching English, like right in the middle of COVID. Couldn't
Okay.
go outside, so I started teaching English online. So I would do that during the day, and then at like 4 p.m., I would go pick up the kids and start my au pair shift.
Okay. And then you said that the family had other au pairs before you. So is there like a maximum time that you can do the work? Is it like a 1 year contract maximum?
I think in France it's 2 years maximum.
Um,
I think it's either 2 years max or up until you're 30 years old, you're eligible for the au pair visa. But yeah, I think most people just do it for 1 year. I know some people who've done it twice, 2 years, but most people just do 1 year.
Okay, we have another person joining, Tati, and we have a comment that it's a great combo and very informative. And hi.
Hello.
So yes, if you're just joining, we're here with Where Tiana Travels. So be sure to subscribe to her channel to see more about life in Paris. Subscribe to this channel to see more interviews with expats from around the world. And what do we have here? So, what did you find the culture to be like in Paris? Because I've been to Paris, and I'm not sure if my experience was valid for like all of Paris or all of France. France, but I found them to be like a little snooty. Like I was in a coffee shop and I laughed. I have an American laugh, so I was laughing just regular, and like I could tell I was bothering the shop owner. The shop owner was like, like I got the impression you're not supposed to laugh in public.
Yeah, that's very valid. I think Parisians, not all French people, but definitely Parisians can be very like snooty, very like stuck up. That's definitely valid. I think when I first came, I was really nervous about that because I always heard, French people are rude. They're not going to talk to me, especially if I don't speak French. Like they're just going to ignore me if I speak. So I was really anxious about that. And I would compare Parisians to like our version of New York, like New Yorkers. So they're not going to go out of their way to be rude to you, but they're also probably not going to go out of their way to be like welcoming and be really friendly either. It's kind of like everyone just minds their own business, does their own thing, like. So that's how I would describe Parisians. Yeah, I think they can be a little arrogant sometimes, but I think honestly, sometimes you just have to be kind of like rude back to them and then they respect you and they're like nicer to you. I don't know why that is. And it's kind of sad, but it works.
Okay, so what about the other regions in Paris? I know you lived in Nice, I think.
Did, yeah. I lived 1 year in Nice.
So are they nicer further south?
Not in Nice, no. They are typically in other cities, but not in Nice. Nice is like a very like old city. A lot of people go there to retire. So the population is a lot older. Typically they have a lot of money. And so they're very like kind of like very stuck up like Parisians are. Um, but I had a good experience because I hung out with mostly like students, very like young generation, a lot of foreigners. So I had a really good experience. But I think if you're older and you're moving there, then you're probably going to deal with a lot of like older French people who are not very nice.
Okay, so Taylor V says, which other cities or towns in France have you visited?
Okay, I've visited quite a few. So I lived in Nice. So I've visited quite a few of the towns nearby, like Cannes, Monaco, Marseille. I've been to Strasbourg, which is like on the border of Germany and France. So they have really cute Christmas markets every year. I have been to, where else have I been? Mont Saint Michel in Normandy. So it's on the West Coast. I've been to a couple cities in the north. So I've been to a few cities, but there's still so many cities that I want to see. Hopefully this year I'll get to visit a few more.
Okay, so you mentioned the Christmas markets. Is that a thing in France, or is it just because that town is close to Germany?
Yeah, we have them in France as well. Definitely in Paris, we have Christmas markets.
Okay.
But then, yeah, there's quite a few like up near Germany because I think maybe that's where they originated.
Uh-huh.
So those are the more authentic ones.
Okay.
Paris has one as well. It's a lot more touristy and but the ones near Germany are a lot more authentic.
Okay. So C. Wilson says she's been to Paris as well. hi.
Mhm.
And she didn't care for Paris either. So she says, I'm not alone.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say this, and I can understand it because sometimes I'm like, I don't know why I'm still here.
We have another comment here. He didn't know that the French have no school on Wednesday. It's interesting. In Kenya, the only day children don't attend school is Sunday and public holidays. So
Wow.
I didn't know that. Does that mean that they go to school on Saturdays too? You could just put it in the comment about Saturdays. Lindsay says, as a New Yorker, she agrees. That being said, if you need help with directions, people will fly in to help without a word. I find I'm from New York as well. So I felt like New Yorkers are totally just in their own world. Like they don't want to talk to you until there's a tragedy or until
Mhm.
something happens. Like New Yorkers come together like nobody's business. Like when something happens, they come together. You're like, where was all this togetherness yesterday or even an hour ago?
Right.
Okay. Lindsay said, my only experience in France was in summer in Clermont, Lyon. Oh, is that one city?
Yes.
Clermont-Ferrand. And somewhere else with lots of lavender fields. I regret not visiting Paris. The combo is putting it back on my list. Oh, it's
I
Provence.
would love to go there. That's on my list for sure. I have yet to make it there, but hopefully sometime soon.
Oh, right. So the culture. So did you feel lonely moving like initially to Paris?
Honestly, not really. I was really excited. I actually started like joining Facebook groups. The second that I knew I was coming to Paris, I started
Mhm.
joining Facebook groups for au pairs, like trying to find any groups that I could. And I started talking to this other girl who's from Florida, and she was coming to Paris to be an au pair as well. And we became friends like months before I even moved to Paris. So that really helped me a lot because I already like knew a few people before even moving there. And then once
Okay.
I got there, like I got introduced to the friends that I had made. They introduced me to their friends that they had, and it kind of just like spiraled from there. So it
Okay.
never really felt lonely.
Good. Okay. So you had a good experience with people, meeting people and English speakers. What about family? Did your friends and family come visit?
They haven't come to visit yet. Hopefully this year. My mom's supposed to come visit this summer, finally. So that'll be good. Um, but I had one friend come visit, and then I go home fairly often, like at least once a year. So I see my family often, so it's okay.
Okay. All right. So I watched one of your videos and I saw you did house sitting in the Netherlands. I don't remember
Mhm.
what city, but it was like outside of Amsterdam. And tell us about your experience. Have you done it other times or was it just that time?
So it was just that time.
Mhm.
I would like to do it again. It was a really good experience, and I've seen a lot of people who like do this full time. So yeah, I would definitely love to do it again for sure. It's a really good experience. I recommend it to anyone who like wants to travel and maybe save a bit of money and not have to pay for accommodation. Or if you work online, it's a really good option as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, so you were there 3 weeks, and how does it work with the owner? Because I was watching your video, you were saying, like, something could happen with the pet and you need to take them to the vet. Like, how does it work with the communication with the owner? Are they calling or texting to check in on the pets? Or, like, yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, so the couple that I, like, went to help out, they were really nice. They would message me, like, every few days. I would send them photos of the cats, like, they were really nice, really chill. I got there, like, a few hours before they left, so they were able to kinda explain everything to me. They left their bike for me to use in case I wanted to get around. They had, like, all the streaming services. They were like, "Whatever's in the fridge, in the cabinets, like, you can eat, you can finish." And because they had cats, like cats are pretty easy, so they weren't really messaging me a lot to see, if everything was okay or what was going on. But they would message me here and there, and I would like send them photos and stuff. So it was pretty easy.
And so they left enough cat food for the whole trip. You didn't have to do any shopping for the cat or anything.
No, I didn't have to do any shopping. There was enough food for the trip. And then actually, I stayed for 3 weeks, and then when I left, there was another house sitter that came after me. So they were gone for like maybe a month and a half. So they
Okay.
had enough for like the whole time that I was there and that the guy after me was there.
Okay. And so you just had to change the cat litter because you don't have to walk them. So what more do you have to do?
Yeah, I literally just like changed the litter, fed them, and then like played with them if they wanted to play. But that's that's it. They're pretty chill. Sometimes like they would run around the apartment in the middle of the night, but other than that, it was really easy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's something I've been looking into from watching Stephanie Perry's videos. I've just been thinking about it and seeing. I'm like, maybe I could try it out.
Yeah, I recommend it, especially if you want to travel. It's a really good
Mhm.
option. I'd recommend looking for someone who has cats or like someone who has small dogs if
Mhm.
you want to like go out during the day and see stuff. Because I see like when I was looking for families, a lot of people have like big dogs and they're like, oh, he needs to be walked 3 times a day or he can't be left home all day. So if something you want to do while you're there is like go out and see the city, then I think cats would be easier or like a small dog would be easier to look after because you can, leave them at home and go do your own thing during the day.
Okay. I will look into it and I'll look for families with cats.
Perfect.
Do they have other pets like a hamster?
Yeah, it depends. Like I looked at a lot of families in like England, like in the countryside, and some people are like, we have 5 chickens, 6 dogs, 3 cats, like 2 hamsters. I'm like, okay, that's a little much for me. But there
Yeah.
are a lot of people who have like different types of animals too.
Okay. All right. So tell us about the cost of living in Paris. It seems a lot cheaper than the States, even though it's developed.
Hmm. Yeah, the cost of living is definitely a lot cheaper than the States. But compared to the salaries here, I think French salaries are a lot lower than US salaries. So
Mhm.
for Parisians and French people, the cost of living is relatively high.
Mhm.
But if you're coming here like with savings or with a US salary, then yeah, it's very, very cheap compared to some cities in the US.
Okay. So how much is like a two-bedroom in Paris?
A two-bedroom, like in the middle of Paris, in a good area, probably, mm, I'd say like 2,400 a month.
Okay. It's not bad. If you compare it to New York, it's a lot
Yeah.
less.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I mean, Paris is expensive, but I'd say majority of the cost is in the rent. Everything else is pretty comparable to like any big city in the US.
All right. So how does healthcare work there? Like when you were an au pair and you were on a visa, do you have public access to public health care?
I do, yeah. So when I was an au pair, my host family helped set me up with like Social Security, which is like the government healthcare. So I have that now. So anytime I go to the doctor's office or I have to go to the pharmacy, I just show them my healthcare card and it's way less expensive. I still have to pay most of the time, but it's very, very inexpensive. Maybe like 20, 30 euros to see a doctor. If I need medication, it's like between 10 and $15.
Okay, very affordable. And are you a resident now? Or are you still on the student visa?
Yeah, I'm still on a visa. Hopefully soon. I'm eligible now actually to ask for nationality since I've been here 6 years.
Mhm.
So hopefully I can get that process going soon. But for now, I'm still on a visa, so I have to renew that each year.
Okay. And how about Paris at night? Do you feel safe walking around um, the city?
It depends. There's definitely some areas of the city that I wouldn't walk around in at night. Even during the day, sometimes I'm kind of like, I don't really want to be over here.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, but I think it's like any big city, you have to always be paying attention. You have to know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you have to look like you know where you're going at all times. I've never had an issue. Uh, there have been more and more cases that I've heard of happening in Paris. It's becoming like more and more unsafe. But like I said, I think it's really any big city. As long as you pay attention and you know where you're going and have your wits about you, I've never had an issue.
Okay. So it's not like London, because I hear London has a real problem with phone theft. Like they're just scrolling by on their scooters.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of cities in Europe like this. There are a lot of thefts in Paris, but it's mostly like on the metro. So there's not a lot of cases where people will like straight up grab it out of your hand on the street or like on a bike. But in the metro, it is a really huge problem. So people will like try to put their hands in your purse or in your pockets. So you really do have to be careful about that. But other than that, it's not really an issue.
Okay. C. Wilson wants to know, how often do you travel to other European countries and do you utilize the train?
Yes. So I haven't traveled through Europe in quite a while. I tried to travel as much as I could when I was an au pair, but because I only had the weekends, I would typically just fly because it was faster and I only had a short amount of time. But I've taken the train within France a few times, and I took the train to Berlin also once, and it's really easy to use. I wish we had a better train system in the States because it's like so much more efficient. So yeah, I've used it a few times, but not really for international travel very often.
Okay. Do you think Paris will be your permanent home?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think for the next few years, I'd like to stay here, but I don't know if I would stay in Paris forever. I would love to move back to the south of France one day. I
Mhm.
could see myself living there permanently. But Paris, I think I got a few more years here, and then I think that's going to be the end of my Paris era.
So, what conveniences, if any, do you miss from living in the US?
Mm. Um, I would say like the options in the grocery store. I know maybe we might not have the best food quality in the US and like a lot of our food has sugar and, bad things, but I really do miss like the amount of options that we have. In the US, if you want to buy cereal, you have like 20, 30 different types of cereal. Here you have like 10 maybe.
Okay.
So I do miss that. And then another thing I miss is just like the efficiency. I think the US has a lot more efficient ways of doing things. Here, it's very slow. They still use like paperwork for a lot of things. So opening a bank account takes forever. You have to like do a lot of paperwork, send it in by mail, then you have to wait for their response by mail. And whenever you want to get things done, there's kind of like a lazy attitude. Like French people aren't really motivated to help you, do their job any faster. And in the US, there's kind of like the customer's always right. We'll do whatever we can to give you a good experience. Like we want this to be as efficient as possible. And that's just not really a thing here. So that can be really frustrating sometimes.
That makes sense. That does make sense. Okay. So, what is a must try dish in France?
Must try. Oh, there's so many. French onion soup is a classic, especially if you come in the winter.
Okay.
Raclette also is really good. It's another winter dish. It's kind of like fondue. So you
Okay.
take cheese and you like melt it and you usually pour it over like ham,
Oh,
charcuterie, potatoes, broccoli, veggies. It's really good.
okay.
And then the pastries, of course. There's so many pastries, so many desserts. Honestly, everything. If you plan on coming to France, plan on just eating everything. It's everything. You have to try everything at least once.
Have you tried the frog legs?
I have, yeah. They're actually pretty good.
Does it taste like chicken?
A little, yeah. It's not something I would like order, but I tried it once just to say I tried it and it wasn't bad.
Okay. So, how would you say your quality of life has improved since moving to Paris?
Um, I would say it's definitely improved a lot. I think in the US we just have such this mindset of like hustle culture. You have to always be working, make as much money as possible. Nobody really has hobbies, and if you do have a hobby, it's because the hobby makes you money, not because it's just something you like to do. And here it's not like that. Like people work, but it's not their identity. You know, they have hobbies, they spend time with family, they do other things, they're involved in their community. And so that was a huge change for me, but I really like that. I think that mindset has kind of brought me a better work-life balance and kind of realigned me a bit with like what's really important in life. And it's not just about making money or like having the best career possible.
Yeah, that's true. Like that is definitely true. People, I personally think it goes back to the lack of family support. And so people are either working or with their kids. I think the French have more help and support. And I hear that they make it a priority to date. They even like make it a priority to have their kids, sleep in where they're supposed to sleep, even from young, like 2 months. They're like, okay, you got to go back so we can be a couple, just going on dates. So yeah, prioritizing that.
Yeah, 100%.
And we have a question. How are the French men treating you? It's a couple of questions. How are they treating you? And is it easy to date given the language difference barrier? And is there racism there?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I guess now it's easier because now I speak French. In the beginning, I stood out like a sore thumb because I didn't speak any French, so they knew immediately I wasn't from there. Now when I speak French, they're like, "Oh, you have an accent. Where are you from?" Like I can't really like put my finger on it. There is definitely racism here, 100%. As much as French people will say there isn't, there is racism here. I think racism here, it's a lot targeted a lot more towards Arabs and Muslims than it is to Black people, but it definitely does exist. And it's a lot more subtle than it is in the States. I think in the States, like people are blatantly racist a lot of the times, and here it's a lot more subtle. A lot of people, French people, will try to tell you, no, we're not racist. They don't want to admit that it's there,
Uh-huh.
uh, but it's definitely there.
So, like, when you say subtle, is it like microaggressions? Is it like comments? Like, can
Yeah,
you
it's
afford this?
definitely like microaggressions, comments about like, "Oh, where are you from?" And then I'll tell them where I'm from. They're like, "Oh, yeah, but like, where are you actually from?" Like, I have
Okay.
told you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then even people like I have a lot of, Arab friends who are born here, but they're maybe, Moroccan or Tunisian, but they were born in France. People will be like, "Yeah, but like, you're not really French."
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that, a lot of comments, a lot of microaggressions for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Lindsay says that she had some Iranian friends when she was there, and it was in 2008 with the war on terror, and they had lots to say.
Mhm,
The French.
mhm, yeah. Especially now, there's a lot more it's a lot more open, there's a bigger divide just like there is in the US with, like, the alt-right and everyone else, it's the same in France, like, it's becoming more and more divided, and they're becoming more and more blatant about their thoughts, so yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have heard the UK is becoming more conservative, more right. I didn't realize France was also in that same pattern.
Yes, definitely. They have elections in 2027, so there a lot of people are worried about, like, the right taking over.
Mhm.
So, hopefully that
That's
doesn't happen.
scary. I gotta go before 2027 then.
Yeah,
Before they change the entrance process, the visiting the tourist visa process.
definitely.
Okay, so you wake up, it's Tuesday morning. What does your day look like?
So, let's see, I wake up usually first thing in the morning, I walk to the bakery. It's like a 2-minute walk from my apartment. I get a coffee and I get a pastry, usually croissant, maybe like a pain au chocolat if I'm feeling fancy. And then I walk home, I have my coffee, I have my breakfast, and then if I don't have to work, I like to go for a walk in the morning if it's sunny, walk around the neighborhood. There's a lot of cute little boutiques and like independent shops that you can walk through and buy things. There's a lot of parks. I could go sit in a park, read a book. see what my friends are doing, maybe hang out with them. There's so many things to do in Paris. There's always like an expo to do. In the summer, there's lots of festivals. So you never get bored here.
And you find your friends are usually available to walk on a Tuesday morning.
So most of them work, so they're not really available. I have one friend who he does content full time on TikTok, so he's always free. So majority of the time I'm with him.
Okay.
He's always down to hang out in the middle of the day. But yeah, if he's not available, then I'm usually by myself because all my other friends are at work.
And then what is the typical work day? In the US, they say it's 9 to 5, but it's really 8 to 6.
Mhm.
What hours are is it there?
It depends, but typically most jobs are 9 to 6, but then you have an hour for lunch.
Okay.
So it's nice because, French people take their lunch hour very seriously and they fully like stop working for an hour. We're going to sit down, we're going to eat, we're going to discuss, and then afterwards we're going to go back to work. So it's nice in that sense. You can like chill for a bit, have a break. But then sometimes it's nice in the States. You can skip your lunch break and go like leave early if you need to.
Okay. Do they drink on their lunch break usually?
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'll let you get some water.
Okay.
So we have a few comments. Lindsay said that's hard to hear about the probably the racism. And then C. Wilson wanted to know, does Paris still have massive protests? Are the yellow vests still active?
Yeah, there are definitely protests here and there. There were just a few last week for International Women's Day and the alt-right, like people protesting against that. But the yellow vests have not been active for a while. They were when I first got here in 2019, but I haven't heard much from them since that.
Okay. And are there scammers in Paris? Um, he watched on YouTube about scammers in London. Maybe people. I saw something where people were looking to rent, but they did it from abroad, and then when they got there, it was like not available for rent.
Yeah, there are a lot of scams when it comes to like apartments. You have to really be careful about that. Um, And then on the streets too, they'll have people playing like card games that are fake, and they'll be like, "Oh, if you bet, you can win money," but it's all fake. They're all in on it. So there are a lot of scams, but I think apartments are like the easiest way to get scammed in Paris is like when you're looking for an apartment.
Okay, so he says, I feel like the bureaucracy and the red tape in France is similar to what we experience in Africa. I could see that. Talking about, you mentioned they still do things via paper and mailing it in, and you have to hear back. I can see that being similar to Africa. In the US, everything is on everything, almost everything is online. You can do your driver's license online as long as they have a picture already. You can, renew some things online. You said something else. Oh, open a bank account. We can do that online.
Yeah, it's really slow here. Everything is done by mail.
So what did you do? Oh, I was asking you about the lunch breaks because they fully commit to their hour break. Um, do they drink? Because I think I've seen. So I watch Emily in Paris, and they drink, not like it's smash, but they have a drink during lunch.
Yeah, it's acceptable to have a drink, have a glass of wine during lunch, but anything more than that, typically no. But after work, they definitely get down after work for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you done, or what did you do abroad, which you could not have done living in the US?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think maybe just like the types of people that I've met. I'm from the Bay Area, which is like fairly diverse, but even still, like I've met so many people from so many different countries and so many different cultures living in Paris that I never knew when I was living in the US, even like in one of the most diverse places in the US. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing, because now I have friends from all over the world. And anytime I'm traveling in a new place, I'm like, oh, I know so and so in this place. Like, let me call them. Or I know so and so from here. They're going to host me, and like I can stay with them and their family. So I think that's the biggest benefit for me that I found from living abroad.
So you got your master's in France, or you're still studying, one of the two?
Yes, I finished it.
Okay. Did you get like I want to say like French pricing, or did you pay like what somebody would pay if they were coming from the US?
So, yeah, so I went to a private school. So here you have public schools and private schools, just like in the States. So the public schools are not free, but they're really inexpensive, maybe like 500 euros for the year. And then private schools are typically like business schools if you want to study finance, marketing, etc. And those typically can be around like 10,000 for the year, or some of the bigger schools can be like 25, 30,000 for the year. So I went to a private school, but I did a work study program that France offers. So I went to school completely free. So
Oh,
I worked
nice.
for a company that paid my tuition, and they also gave me a salary.
Oh,
So I
wow.
didn't pay anything. Yeah, it was a really good opportunity.
Not, and then you're French now. Would you say you're fluent in French now?
Yes, I would say I'm fluent in French now, unless I'm like debating someone, then I'm like, okay, I can't debate in French, but anything else, I could speak French pretty well.
And your work is in French or in English?
I teach English online, so I speak English all day, but I teach French adults, so sometimes I have to like translate things, or I have some students who like don't speak any English. So I speak most of the time with them in French.
Okay. So do you think you'll ever move back to the US?
I don't think so. Probably not anytime soon, at least. Maybe like long term for retirement, maybe, but I think anytime in the near future, it's very unlikely.
Taylor V wants to know what your master's degree is in.
My master's degree is in digital marketing.
Oh, well, that's helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, okay. So not thinking about moving back. So is there anything that you wish you could change about the US?
Lots of things that I wish I could change. Yeah, kind of just what you talked about before. Like, I think parents here have a lot more support, and I wish that that was something that we could see in the US, especially now when they're pushing, like, the birth rate's declining. We need to have more kids, but then
Mhm.
they don't take into account the fact that like parents don't have a support system. We don't really have community. You have to pay for everything. Like the cost of living is so expensive. So I really wish that they would implement that in the US. And then like the healthcare as well is a huge thing that I think should be a right for everyone to have access to healthcare. So the US should definitely implement that as well.
Agreed. We need maternity leave, mandatory maternity leave. No matter where you work, you get maternity leave. That
Yes.
would be helpful. Okay, so is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel like people should know about Paris, or like the perspective of being an American in Paris?
I just think if you are an American and you want to live abroad, not necessarily in Paris, but just anywhere in general, don't listen to the people online who are saying like, "Oh, you can't do that. Like it's so expensive." It is difficult. The process of moving abroad is definitely not easy, but it is doable. And it makes me sad because I see a lot of creators posting about, how they live abroad, and then you see people in the comments who are like, yeah, well, maybe like you could do it. You have the privilege to do that, but like not everybody can,
Mhm.
which is true. But don't let people scare you into thinking like, oh, it's too difficult. I can't do it. If you really want to do it, there's always a way to do it.
Yeah, that's why I have this channel, because I think people will see someone online and they'll see how that person is different. They're like, oh, but you're married. Oh, but you don't have kids. Oh,
Mm.
but you're young. Oh, but you're retired. Oh, but like, and all of these different things. So, like, the more stories we hear from people who are doing it and who are in all of these different situations, who are single mom, who are with kids, who are without kids, who are retired, who are in school, who are working, like the more we see all of these different people who are doing it, then I feel like it'll be more common and possible. People will think it's more possible. So you are Where Tiana Travels. So if you're watching, be sure to subscribe to her channel and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more interviews with expats. So thank you so much for joining us. If anybody else has any other comments or questions, I will put that up here. But I do feel like I have a better view of life in Paris.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
So the show 90 Day Fiancé, The Other Way wouldn't exist.
I love that show.
Yes. Yes, thank you for being here. Yeah, the only French, like American in French or in France that I know is like Emily in Paris. And I feel like it's pretty accurate. Like her experience, like the French, I feel like that is French culture. They're kind of like snooty on the show as well.
Yeah, 100%. A lot of French people are like, "Oh, I hate that show." And I'm like, "Do you hate it because it's low key true?"
Yeah, right. And then the food looks so good. The wine country looks so good. I'm gonna have to make another visit out there.
Yes, definitely have to come visit. Let me know if you're ever in town.
Yes, I will. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.